Is your business protected against the threat of malicious litigation and frivolous lawsuits? Are you sinking company profits into marketing campaigns that do nothing to contribute to the growth of your business? Bottled Business Sense provides practical business perspectives that uniquely emphasize both legal and media marketing strategies to protect and ensure the longevity of your business. And whether you're trying to provide a startup business with some level of stability or an established business with foolproof asset and estate protection, or simply attempting to get a better return for your business marketing dollars, Bill Bernard and Rick Moscoso will expose potential pitfalls to ensure the security and growth of your business, free from unwanted expense and the threat of litigation. You'll learn how to implement marketing and protection tools equal to those used by today's most successful corporations. Let's join Bill and Rick for today's Bottled Business Sense Show.
Everyone, here we are again on the Bottled Business Sense Show. It's Tuesday morning here at 10 a.m. I am Rick Moscoso, one of your hosts this morning, and I want to welcome all our viewers and listeners out there. We have another exciting show today with our guest host, Steve Smith, but before we do that, I wanted to introduce our co-host here on the Bottled Business Sense Show, and that is Mr. Bill Bernard. How you doing there, Bill?
I'm doing just great, Rick, and again, glad to be back with everybody. Another great Tuesday morning of free information on how to prosper your business. And in order to do, we have engaged our local business coach and colleague, Mr. Steve Smith of Growth Source Coaching, in order to lend some additional meaning to some things that I think our business owners would be interested in. So without further ado, why don't we introduce Steve and find out what our show's all about today?
Absolutely. Well, last week, folks, if you missed the first episode, we talked about how goal making, how to make goal achievement a way of life. And this is a follow-up to that. And today's episode with Steve is how you can power up your routine so you can get better results. So with that being said, let's introduce our guest host, Mr. Steve Smith with Growth Source Coaching. How you doing, Steve?
I'm doing great today, Rick. I want to thank you and Bill for having me on again. I love doing these kinds of shows, and I think you guys have a great format for having informal discussions about things that, business owners or professionals can really make use of. So, I applaud you for what you do.
Well, thanks, Steve. We appreciate that.
Yeah, thank you. Well, Steve, last week you talked about goal achievement and how a vision board can really help you, how having an accountability coach can help you. So let's take that to the next step and how we can use this to power up your routine. And what would be the next step for business owners out there?
Well, the topic that we're talking about today is important from a standpoint of, you may have big goals that you want to achieve over a month, a quarter, a year, but you have to live that time every single day. And a lot of times what gets people less than what they desire is how they run their daily routine. How productive are they at getting the things done that are most important to them, as opposed to just cramming in a whole bunch of stuff in a given day and then going home all tired and burnt out and saying, well, I got a lot of stuff done. So the whole idea here is to really dissect that whole process and say, how do you become more productive and get more important things done and still have enough time to enjoy life? Because we're not all put on the earth here to run a business. That's part of what we choose to do.
Yeah, that's right. Well, what's the first step in taking a look at this topic today?
Well, one of the things that I realized a number of years ago, and it has to do with how people approach their time, what they spend their time doing, how they make decisions to focus on certain activities. And what I realized was a lot of people in the normal course of a day, they're just trying to get through the day, basically. They might get into their office at 8 in the morning or 8:30, and sometimes they try to get out by 6, or they're in there till 8:30 at night. And when I ask folks, when I do seminars and talks on this, and I say to people, what would you need in order to feel more productive in your day? And one of the most common responses I get is, can you give me 4 or 5 more hours? So basically, they want to take a 24-hour day and make 30 hours out of it. But that doesn't guarantee that the day's going to be any better. It just means they're going to spend more time doing exactly what they're doing now. That's part of the problem. It's the way people approach what they decide to spend their time and their energy and their focus doing that gets us all in trouble. That's what causes the ruts, that causes the burnout, that's what causes the long hours with these feelings of, gee, I didn't get anything worthwhile done. So what I try to do is help people power up their routine by making better choices, focusing, deciding how they're going to get through the day as opposed to letting the day decide for them.
So it's kind of a method of maybe, Steve, kind of maximizing your day, right? Learning how to organize it and maximize it better within the hours that you have.
Those are all important components. But here, a guy that I used to work for years ago had a great saying, and this is when I was in a corporate environment. He said, you know, we all work long hours. Many of us spend weekend time either in travel or conventions or all number of things. He says, I don't really care how many hours a week you work, as long as you get the important stuff done. And I even asked him one day at a meeting, I said, look, you know, let's be honest. You know, if I could get all of the things that are important for our organization to do, and I could do it all in 3 days, what do I do with the other 2? He goes, that's your choice. He goes, I'm less interested in how many hours you register on the clock and how much stuff you're actually able to accomplish that's meaningful.
Right.
And I walked away from that thinking, you know what? That's a fundamental mindset shift in how we value our own time and our own effort. Are we just looking at putting in a lot of hours so we can say we got a lot of stuff done? Or are we actually looking at what's the most essential thing I need to get done today or this week, and if I get that done, I can take off because all the rest of the time is going to probably be spent in some minutia that I don't really have to do. If it doesn't get done, the business isn't going to come to a halt. The Earth's not going to stop turning. You know, everything will just kind of go on the way it is. So the whole idea of powering up your routine is not adding more to your day. It's figuring out how you're going to use that so you get greater, better things done, and you have the time to take off and do what you want.
So it sounds like it goes along the lines of trying to get yourself to work smarter, not necessarily harder, right?
Yes. And but that whole concept of work smarter rather than harder, without being well defined, some people equate working smart with getting a 3-page list of stuff done, as opposed to narrowing it down to the 5 things that are most important to do. So there needs to be a lot of context in terms of what constitutes a smarter way to work.
Right. So what's the first thing that you recommend to your clients when they're having trouble with this type of situation?
Well, I'll give you an example. I worked with a guy and his wife who owned a printing business. They still have it. They're in Arizona. They were getting up in age. They were really looking at kind of backing away as opposed to working 6 days a week. And within the first 30 days, I had cut 10 hours out of their schedule. 10 hours they could do anything they want with. And you know what they did with it? They went back to the shop. And so I thought, okay, there's something wrong with this. Okay, I've just freed up the equivalent of a day and a quarter for you to do. You could go out, take a drive, go visit some monument, or go visit some people. Just relax 1 day a month. Because you're obviously not getting it done on the weekends, and they didn't know what to do with it. So what I took away from that was saving time is not always the immediate priority when you're trying to power up your routine. Sometimes it's really deciding what is meaningful. What's the most meaningful, purposeful thing you should be spending your time doing, and what other stuff can you either delegate out or just not do? And it's funny because when I have these conversations with local business groups, it always gets around to like, well, how do you do that? And the thing that I find interesting is, and we all battle it, I battle it myself, is the biggest thing that kills productivity, the single biggest thing, if you didn't do anything else with this show but follow this one tip, you'd be infinitely farther ahead. And it's learn how to deal with distractions. Figure out what's distracting you, what's pulling you off task, what's getting you realigned, and get rid of it. Stop doing it. If you just made that one commitment, here's a big one. If you're working in a business environment, you're in an office, there's a lot of people around you, whether they're colleagues or peers or other folks. One of the things I find people have an extraordinarily difficult time dealing with is saying no. Somebody comes up to you, and they're oh my gosh, if I don't get this done, I'm going to miss my deadline, and it's just all this weeping and gnashing of teeth going on. And so what do you do? I'll help. I'll help you do it. Well, what that person has done, whether they will own up to it or even realize it, is they've taken the burden that they've been walking around with and they've just given it to you, and basically they're saying, call me when it's finished.
Yeah.
Okay?
Yeah.
How many times have you felt like you've been in that situation? So now
they don't necessarily want help. They want you
focus,
to actually take it over.
Yeah. Your schedule, your focus, your energy have now been compromised because you're doing other stuff that somebody else didn't think enough of to do themselves. So learning how to negotiate those kinds of requests that kind of get put on you, and getting comfortable saying no, or getting comfortable helping somebody redirect it off to someplace else, that's a skill, and it requires practice. But that's one of the things that I help people with, that if they happen to be in that situation where they're just scattered. They're coming up with a million good ideas, nothing's actually getting implemented. 1 month, next month, all of a sudden halfway through the year, they really haven't gotten anything meaningful done with their business because they're too busy juggling a bunch of unproductive stuff.
Well, it seems to me this ties into what we were discussing somewhat last week, Steve, where the very first thing we spoke about was having meaningful goals. And if you're able to identify those and have the vision to understand what it takes to plan those out, you're going to be far less inclined, I would think, to be in a position to want to hand off things to somebody else that you feel you can't do. Rather, you'll hand off things that you don't need to do so you can concentrate on those goals, right?
Absolutely. And in a day or a given week, and one of the things I work with people on that have trouble prioritizing what needs to be done is I will tell them, sit down on a Friday afternoon, 3:30, 4 o'clock, give yourself permission to just think about your business as opposed to being locked in activity, all day long. But sit down and think about what's really most important for you to accomplish, to get done over the next week. And I even have a little sheet, priority sheet that I give people. And I tell them, I don't want any more than 7 action items on that list for the next week. And once you get them on there, I want you to figure out how long it's going to take you to do it. And I want you to actually go time block it on your calendar. So there's a specific day and time that you've sectioned off that you're going to work on that particular thing. And if you can get through the next week and you get 7 action items that are really meaningful and important for you to be doing, and you get those things done, over the course of a month and a quarter, you'd be amazed at how many things you can buzzsaw your way through because you're putting priority and focus on what's most critical, and you're committing yourself time to actually work on it as opposed to trying to fit it in whenever you have a moment. When you start doing that, when you completely flip your scheduling process upside down and you start blocking out time for major projects and initiatives in addition to your client work and other client appointments and things like that, and you reserve all the loose time on your calendar for the catch-up stuff, guess what happens? The important stuff starts getting done.
Yeah, this sounds like a client that is probably near and dear to your heart who made out several charts to organize on what day, what things were going to be done to move the business forward. And in a way, that was powering up the routine. And I think it doesn't matter who we're speaking of specifically, but drawing those charts out and saying, what day, what are you going to do on Monday, what are you going to accomplish on Tuesday, what are you going to accomplish on Wednesday, et cetera, et cetera. It leads me to believe, would an interchangeable way to say power up your routine, would it really also be organize your routine or organize your day or week, Steve, something like that?
Well, organization is a vital element. What you just described is a form of organization. But you can be very organized and not get anything meaningful done. And all you're really doing is handling. See, when you put everything on a list and there's no priority to it, it means if there's no priority, that means everything has the same level of attention to it. So everything's going to get done just depending on what comes to you. And there's just no way to be able to sequester enough time to do what's really important in your business. You know, if you're, you know, you guys have this radio show that runs every week. You have to spend time coming up with guests and topics and setting it up and promoting it and doing all this kind of stuff. You know, that takes some commitment and some priority. And if you don't do that, then what usually happens is you find yourself running up against the clock. Oh my gosh, we don't have any time left to promote, or we're going to promote, but nobody's going to know the show exists because there's not enough time to have. So all of that kind of stuff takes some planning, some organization, and some commitment to doing that, as opposed to probably any number of other things that might cross your desk that you could just use up your time doing. I mean,
Okay, well,
when you look at your time, when you look at the time that everybody has to work, we only get so much of it. You can't replace what you waste. You can't buy more of it. Everybody's getting the same 24 hours a day that it just goes and goes and goes. It doesn't stop and take a pause. It's just out there. You have to make sure you use it. So what if you were to think of your time as currency? What were you if you were actually able to put a dollar value on every hour that you have? Would that change how you decide to apply that time value to a particular function you're going to do?
yes, and I think I see what you're getting at. But let me give you a hypothetical, so I think it's crystal clear for our listeners and viewers, Steve. If you came to Bill or Rick or whoever it might be, and you said, you know what, Bill, Rick, you're two of the most organized guys I've ever seen in terms of running your business, but you need to power up your routine. In other words, what would you, if you knew we were totally organized, what would we be lacking that would make you make a statement like that we need to power up our routine?
Okay. I would look at your organization and the things that you had assigned time and energy to do, and I would ask you, what's the value of doing that? If you spend 2 hours doing that, what's going to happen as a result of that?
I got you. Yeah. Okay.
And then you might say, well, you know, I need to do it. Okay. Why does it need to be done then? If that's a time in the afternoon when you could be spending that time doing networking or marketing or other things that would expand your business by bringing in clients and driving revenue, is that a better use of your time? As opposed to just being highly organized and cranking through a bunch of things, but not having them produce an outcome that is necessarily a good thing to have. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. So in other words,
everything you touch is of the same value set.
In other words, concentrate on the things that are going to help you reach those goals that you've set.
Sure.
Not the stuff that either is meaningless, but you may think is important, or stuff that may be necessary, but you could delegate out to other people.
Right. Yeah. Right. And there's certain activities sometimes that you have to be painfully aware of that are what I call time-sucking traps. Now, let's just say you really need to focus on, doing your lawyer work. You're preparing briefs. You're getting ready for a court case. If you've got your computer on your desk open to your email, and emails are just fluttering in the inbox, and that's causing you to get distracted and go over, oh, I got to answer that. Oh, I've been waiting for that guy. Oh, and all of a sudden you're going to look back after an hour and find out you spent 40 minutes of it dealing with email.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep.
Okay. So sometimes understanding the distractions that can get you off track the fastest are the things you need to actually get in front of and say, okay, I'm going to spend 2 hours on this brief. I'm shutting my email off altogether.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have a follow-up question for that, but that I'll ask you in a second. But for the folks that are just joining us, we have Steve Smith with Growth Source Coaching on the show today, talking about how you can power up your routine so you get better results in your business. Steve's contact information will be below this video, and I'll let him talk a little bit more on how to get a hold of him towards the end of the show. But my follow-up question, Steve, to that comment about email is that, you talked about time blocking your schedule for the day or for the week. How do you recommend how do you time block for checking email? Because in today's mobile environment, you've got these things hanging on your hip or in your pocket, constantly buzzing or ringing or whatever it is, and everyone's tempted to answer it now because it's there. So how do you remain productive throughout the day, and how do you recommend somebody time block to really address the emails while you're doing the important things daily or weekly?
Okay, here's a fallacy that I've found a lot of people operate under today with technology, like cell phones and computers, and it's just habit forming. There's really no other reason for it. When somebody contacts you, they send you an email, they send you a text, unless you're expecting that person as a follow-up to something you requested, most of the time, nobody expects instantaneous responses. Most of the time, if you get back to that person by the end of the day, by the end of the business day, you're totally fine. In fact, I've had people after sending me an email at 9 in the morning, and I send them back a reply at 4 in the afternoon, and I give them exactly what they were looking for. They're surprised that I responded to them the same day. We train people to expect unrealistic communication patterns when we immediately get back to them as soon as you see an email. You don't have to, your business is not going to die if you train people to know, yes, I will get back to you at the end of the business day with exactly what you were looking for, and it doesn't disturb you. There's nothing wrong with turning off your email for an hour so you're not distracted. When I go in and have appointments with clients, I turn my phone off because there's really no reason to have the phone on and have it ringing because the client's going to feel bad. Well, do you want to take that call? No. Well, why is it ringing? You've got to set some of your own personal boundaries on the way you communicate. And I guarantee you, if you draw the line on some of these things, people are not going to defriend you on Facebook.
I've seen guys in the corporate environment where they'll actually either leave a voicemail or a vacation message, not that they're on vacation, but notifying anyone that contacts them via email that they respond to emails during this block of time of the day, like between 2 and 4 or 8 and 10, and I'll respond to you during those times. Have you seen that before? Do you recommend that?
I've seen people do that. A guy that used to work for me years ago had an email message that I thought was just irritating as all get out, but he seemed to like it. And he would basically tell people, thank you for calling. I appreciate your calling. Your request is important to me. Oh, by the way, I respond to voicemails within 24 hours. So, no, I don't recommend you do stuff like that. If you want to build an autoresponder into your email service, which all of them have that ability, you could basically for every email coming in within a certain time frame, from 6 in the morning till 2 in the afternoon, you can send a very nice autoresponder message back, similar to what people do on vacation, and just say, I got your email. I appreciate you contacting me. Expect a response between this hour and this hour. And you just basically tell them, here's what's going to happen, and then just make sure you do it. That's totally fine. People, as long as people understand what to expect, they're very accommodating. But between not knowing what to expect and everybody feeling like they've got to be tethered to their phone 24/7, we've really added some bad habits into our normal mode of communications.
Yeah, I've seen guys send text messages, business text messages, and standing right next to them, and within the minute that the recipient doesn't respond, they're using 4-letter words, wondering why aren't they responding back to me right away.
Right, and so you're always going to have those kinds of folks. And the caveat that I put out for that is know your audience. I mean, it's a good principle regardless of what you do. If you have certain clients that you know are kind of high maintenance, then you may have to accommodate for that. But just know who your contacts are, who the people that are normally calling you, and just, you know, make an adjustment. But if you could remove half the distractions in a given day, your productivity, your routine for the day would zoom forward. Because every time, and this is interesting, every time you use that phone, you know, at the top you can usually move the screen down and it gives you all the notifications. You got a comment from somebody on LinkedIn, you know, you got this message coming in, all these little notifications that kind of stack up on the top of your phone waiting for you to open them. I had read a study actually at the beginning of this year by a guy that did a fairly extensive study on the use of cell phones. And his conclusion was, every time you bring that thing down and you click on one of those notifications to read, you know, a comment or a response or something like that, it takes you on average 23 minutes to get back to what you were doing before you did that. 23 minutes.
Yeah, I wouldn't doubt that.
I mean, think of how much you have to power up your own head to get back focused on what you were doing before you allowed yourself to be distracted with that.
Oh, and
So-
it's easy to get distracted, especially if you're a solopreneur working at home in your home office, and it's like you have a window open over here on this screen. I wonder what's trending on Facebook today.
Oh, absolutely.
You know,
Absolutely. These people with multiple screens, you know, 3 or 4 of them, that to me, that's just a minefield of distraction. Now,
So bottom line, Steve, if you start your day, you got your plan all set out. You've now filtered out all of the distractions, and you're going to concentrate on powering up your routine. How do you identify those distractions before you're able to filter them out? I guess is really what I'm saying. Who's the person who has to? Because sometimes we're so close to it ourselves we don't see it, right? And
Right.
of course that's why you're out there. So what would be your suggestion on to identify distractions so you can power up your routine?
okay. There's one surefire way to do this. It's not easy. It's very laborious, but you will get some insights like you've never gotten before. Take a piece of paper, and for a 3-day stretch, sometimes I have clients do this for 2 weeks, but I'm just starting off with 3 days here. Take a piece of paper, and for 3 days, from the time you start work to the time you're done, every 15 minutes, write down what you just spent that 15 minutes doing. You don't have to write a paragraph, just a bullet point. What did you do? And at the end of 3 days, look at your pattern of activity. You will find the distractions real quick.
And could you then take that piece of paper and go back and match it up against the goals that we discussed in last week's show and just simply say, hey, is this going to help me really reach the goals that I've set out for myself?
Well, yeah, because if you figured out, let's just say, and this is probably not too far off the mark, but let's say in a given 8-hour day, 3 full hours are involved with things that are produced by distractions or a very, very low-level activity that if you just decided not to do it, it wouldn't matter to anybody. 3 hours a day, okay? That's probably not too far off the, you know, what studies have shown in terms of people's productivity. Over a 5-day week, that's 15 hours, okay? That's the equivalent of 2 days. So in a 5-day week, 2 days have been spent dealing with low-level minutia and distractions.
Yeah.
If you got rid of those, let's just say you got rid of 50%. Don't try to, you know, swing for the fence all at once. Get rid of half of it. That means 1 day a week you're free. What are you going to do with that 1 day?
So you could market. You could you know, maybe take some relaxation, some time that you were looking forward to having off. There's all kinds of things you could do with it.
Shoot, you could spend 1 day a week writing a book.
Yeah.
The whole point is take control of what you're focusing on, what you're spending your time on, and reallocate the residual to things that are genuinely meaningful and fun. You know, I think we've all gotten into this mindset that work can only be meaningful if it's not fun. If it's laborious, if it's hard, if it's stressful, that's the definition of work. Well, it's that way because we decided to make it that way.
And you know, the interesting play on words here when you say power up your routine, to me it all goes back to the fact that this is a work in progress, and the reason I don't think it's as easy as everybody thinks. Well, here's a show about powering up your routine. Well, I can do that. I don't think you can, because the whole word routine is the key, isn't it, Steve? I mean, we're indoctrinated at a young age in certain routines that may not be healthy for us when we go to run a business, and we've got to extract those from our daily routine and power up the ones that are functional and help us reach our goals, right?
Yes, everybody, you are going to be a lot more productive and effective if you have a routine, because a routine is what keeps you on track. It keeps you moving through the day. The question is, what are you putting into that routine? Is the routine just full of a lot of abject, fast-paced, low-level activity accomplishment or wasted time? Or is the routine actually well-planned, purposefully spent, and efficiently worked on so that the most important things get done, and the time that's left over is time you can choose to do what you want? I mean, let's face it, how many of us decide to go into business for ourselves because we have these illusions of grandeur? We're going to make more money, we're going to call our own shots, we're going to have all this time to be able to spend doing what we want, okay? That's usually what people decide is the reason they want to have their own business as opposed to working for someone else. So when you actually get into the situation where you can affect what you do by making priorities and decisions and be able to free up time to do what you want, we walk away from that philosophy immediately, and we fill it with more stuff that we may or may not have to spend time doing.
Yeah. And that, you know, this is a great show to really expose people to what you do and how you're able to help them, as was last week's show, by the way. Because, again, I really think an important feature here is not the notion that there's something wrong with the business owner and he needs some sort of external help. It's the simple fact that many times we're so close to things that we can't see things as objectively as a professional who's trained to help us run our business.
Yes, and many times it's simply because we're not skilled at being able to step back and just look at everything somewhat dispassionately and say, do I really need to be doing that? I mean, I might have gotten used to doing it, I might have gotten good at it, it's baked into what I like to do week after week, but do I really need to be doing it?
Yeah.
And you'd be amazed if you start taking a critical view of some of your daily activity, how much stuff you could walk away from and nobody would care.
And you'd end up not caring too. You'd be glad. You'd be glad in the end.
Right.
Well,
Absolutely.
Been another great show, Steve. I can't thank you enough, and I'm really looking forward to continuing this series in the next few weeks that we have remaining. And Rick, any final thoughts, Rick, for Steve before we close the show?
Well, this is again, Steve. This has been great. A great follow-up to our first episode with you. And is there any final thoughts that you have? A takeaway from today's episode that can really hit home with our viewers?
If you don't like the way your week is running, if you really feel like you're working really, really hard and you're not getting the kind of stuff done that you want, you're not getting the milestones met, you don't have to hire a coach. I mean, that's one way. Sure, that'd be great for me to come in and help you out, but get a hold of somebody that you can sit down with and say, what's really important here? Help me get through this so I can make some very critical decisions about where I'm spending my time. Get some help from somebody outside your immediate business to help you get clarity about what you should be doing and what you don't need to do. And you'd be surprised at how much, you know, even a minor adjustment can have a major positive effect over time.
Well, that's great advice. And for our viewers out there, if you do have a need to take up this discussion a little bit further, Steve would be a great place to start. that discussion with. And how can our viewers reach out to you? What's the best way for them to connect?
If you're at a point where you'd like to have a conversation, you can call me at my office. The number is 949-951-9163. That's my direct line. Be glad to chat with you and answer questions or help you get a better perspective on what's possible and how business coaching might or might not work for you. If you want a little more of a passive approach, you can go to my website. It's growthsourcecoaching.com. And you can learn about me and about the programs I offer and the specialties I provide and even a lot of the clients I've worked with. And there's other great articles on there. It's a great informational website. So you can visit that and stay as long as you like. And then if you decide you want to move on to a more direct contact, you can send me an email from there.
That's awesome, Steve.
And one final note, Steve, before we go, what do we have in store for us for next week's show? Because I know you're going to be back with another exciting topic.
Next week, we're going to be shifting gears a little bit, but still talking about the professional business owner and what they can learn to do that can improve their business. We're going to be talking about how to speak effectively to your customers. It's kind of an odd-sounding topic, but really it goes to the heart of the element of marketing that many people do poorly. And it's coming up with a crystal clear message that the customers you want to work with are going to respond to. And most people don't think about it. They think about, what's the cost of the ad, how big is the ad, how much is it going to show, what delivery system is it going to get. They don't think about what am I actually saying that's going to cause people to either say, yeah, I like that, I'm going to contact this person for this product or service, or no, that doesn't mean anything to me, I'm just going to blow them off. So learning how to speak to your customers is a huge, huge benefit of being an effective marketer for your own business.
And I'm looking forward to that because everything Steve's talking about here in these 4 weeks that he's going to be on with us is about principally promoting your business and how to make it successful. But it also deals with the protection of your business, I think, too, because it makes sure that the sanctity of your business is going to remain intact. It's going to be ongoing as long as you keep doing the right things. And as long as it's ongoing and it's protected and it's prosperous, that's about as much as we can ask. So thanks again, Steve. I'll turn it over to Rick, and we're looking forward to seeing you next week.
Yeah, thanks for having me on again.
All right, as always, everyone out there, have a great week. Have a great, prosperous week. We look forward to seeing you again next Tuesday at 10 a.m. here on the Bottle Business Sense Show. Have a great day, everyone.
Take care,
Bye,
guys.
everybody.